So Hebrews 7:26 through 28. For it was fitting for us to have such a high priest, holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens, who does not need daily, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people, because this he did once for all when he offered up himself. For the law appoints men as high priests who are weak, but the word of the oath, which came after the law, appoints a son, made perfect forever. Notice the capital letters there. Bible study manuals on these verses. So the priesthood of the priests of the order of Aaron, who administered the law to Israel, were limited in their mortal lifespans, weak, sinful, and not able to administer salvation unto eternal life to themselves or to others. It was fitting that all of mankind, in order to have available to them eternal life, to have a high priest, holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens, who does not need daily, like those high priests who administered the law to Israel, the priesthood of Aaron, to offer up sacrifices for others, even for their own sins. So Christ, who is without sin, offered up himself once for the sins of all mankind. But the word of the oath, which word came from God, making an oath, which came after the law, appoints a son, his one and only Son, Jesus Christ, made perfect forever in his perfect humanity, appointed by God himself as high priest to the order of the priesthood of Melchizedek, a priesthood equal to the eternality and perfection of the high priest, Jesus Christ. Expositors on these verses. His better sacrifice, 7:26 to 28. This section of the study is rounded off with a glowing description of Christ as our high priest, better qualified than the Levitical priests, and one who offered a better sacrifice than they did. 7:26. For it was fitting for us to have such a high priest, holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. Well, Expositor says in the NIV, 26 omits the important word for that links this proposition to the preceding one. Well, but it could be implied, and it is because Christ is what he is that he intercedes as he does, meets our need, is fitting for us. Even our human sense of the fitness of things is able to recognize Christ's suitability for his saving work. There are two Greek words for holy. One, hagios, refers to the quality of separateness of belonging to God, and the other, hosios, which signifies rather the character involved in that separation. Hosios is used here. He is also blameless, without evil, innocent, and pure. Pure contains the thought of being undefiled, and there may be a contrast between the ritual purity of the Levitical high priest, must be careful to maintain, and the complete moral purity of Jesus. There is probably another contrast in the words set apart from sinners. For the Levitical high priest was required to leave his home for 7 days before the Day of Atonement and live in such a manner as to ensure that he avoided ritual defilement. But Jesus' separation was not ritual. Some think the words refer to a spotless character and think he is being contrasted with sinful men. It is more likely that we should take the words closely with the following. His work on earth is done. He has accomplished his sacrifice. He has been exalted above the heavens. This makes him the perfect intercessor. Verse 27, which reads, who does not need daily, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people, because this he did once for all when he offered up himself. So, Expositor says on verse 27, there is a problem in the reference to offering sacrifices day after day. For while there were daily sacrifices in the temple, the high priest was not required to offer them personally. And the sacrifices that he did demand, his personal action, those on the Day of Atonement, took place once a year and not once a day, a fact the author well knows. Some have thought that we should understand the words to mean not that the high priest offered every day, but that he felt the need to offer every day. Others think that Christ's high priestly office, unlike that of the Levitical high priests, which involved repeated offerings, is fulfilled daily by his one sacrifice. Such solutions have their attraction, yet it is not easy to reconcile them with the actual words used. F.F. Bruce reminds us that it was always possible for the high priest, as for other people, to commit inadvertent sin, which required the offering of a sin offering, Leviticus 4:22-3, and that thus the high priest needed to offer daily to ensure his fitness for ministry. We should also bear in mind that Leviticus requires the high priest to offer the cereal offering each day. Notice that it is the son, not all the priests, who is to succeed him, Aaron, as anointed priest, who was required to offer this offering. This was required as expiatory. Jesus stands in contrast to the earthly priests. He has no need to offer for his own sins because he has none, and he has no need to keep offering for the sins of the people, for his one sacrifice has perfectly accomplished this. They were sinful men and had to provide for the putting away of their own sin before they were in a fit condition to do anything about the sins of the people. What they did for themselves, they then proceeded to do for others. But Christ's offering is different. There is none for himself, and for others he offered once for all. There is an air of utter finality about this expression. It is characteristic of the author that he introduces the thought of Christ's sacrifice, but does not elaborate. He will return to the thought later and develop it. We got verse 28. For the law appoints men as high priests who are weak, but the word of the oath, which came after the law, appoints a son made perfect forever. Here the contrast between men with all their infirmities and the Son with his eternal perfection is further brought out. The law brings us back to the law of Moses, the law of divine origin indeed, but the law that necessarily operates among men with all their weakness. And when the law appoints high priests, they must be limited as all men are limited. There is no other possibility. The weakness refers to the frailty to which all human flesh is heir. Priests are not made from some super race, but from ordinary men, with all the frailty that characterizes ordinary men. But introduces the contrast, the oath makes a difference. This, we are reminded, fix this, came after the law, and so cannot be thought of as superseded by it. The oath has the last word, not the law. And the oath appointed the Son, actually Psalm 110, which speaks of the oath, does not mention the Son who is referred to in Psalm 2, but the author sees both Psalms as referring to Jesus, so he has no difficulty in applying terminology taken from the one to a situation relating to the other. And the Son has been made perfect forever. He has been made perfect through those sufferings in 2:10 that bring people to God. Bible Knowledge Commentary on 7:26 to 7:28. After all, he is the kind of priest who meets our needs. His character is utterly without blemish, and he has been exalted above the heavens. Consequently, too, he had no need, like the Levitical priests, to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins, and then for the sins of the people. At first sight, verses 27 to 28 seem to refer to the ritual of the Day of Atonement, but that was yearly, not day after day. Probably these verses telescope that ritual with a regular sacrificial routine. There seems to be some evidence that Jewish tradition that a high priest was thought to offer daily sacrifice and the stipulations of Leviticus 6:12-13 may refer to him. In any case, the new priest had no need either for sacrifices for himself or for repeated sacrifices for others. His one act of self-offering was definitive and sufficient. Of this more will be said in Hebrews 9 and 10. Here the author was content to conclude that, in contrast with the Levitical priests, the Son is a perfected high priest. The reference to the fact that he has been made perfect forever recalls Hebrews 5:8-10. The sufferings of the Son here referred to his sacrificial offering of himself once for all are what have constituted him perfect for his role in God's presence, where he intercedes for his followers. Thus, the law appointed as high priests those who are weak, but the oath, which came after the law, appointed this kind of priest, perfect priest, and the oath of God about him, of the priesthood of Melchizedek. Accordingly, the readers could go to him at all times, fully confident of his capacity to serve their every need.